Beneath 15,000 feet of icy Atlantic water, the battleship Bismarck rests in total silence, a massive steel tomb holding over 2,000 men. For decades, history claims she was destroyed by British guns. After all, the British Navy had one mission: sink the Bismarck. But when underwater drones finally illuminated her scarred hull, experts noticed something that changed everything. Look at this. I think we found something here. A question was born that still haunts historians today. Was Bismarck destroyed by enemy fire, or did her own crew sink her deliberately? The hunt for Bismarck. During World War II, the Bismarck was Germany's ultimate weapon, a floating fortress that threatened to rule the Atlantic and choke off Britain's vital supply routes. The Allies knew they had no choice. The Bismarck had to be stopped. Today, her remains lie deep in the North Atlantic, around 400 miles west of Brest, France, one of the most haunting relics of the war. She sits upright on the ocean floor, nearly 15,700 feet below the surface, where the temperature never rises above 39 degrees Fahrenheit, and the water pressure crushes down with nearly 7,000 pounds per square inch. No human could ever walk her decks again. The pressure alone would flatten you long before you got close. And this isn't just a wreck. It's a grave. More than 2,000 men went down with her in May 1941, and that loss defines how she is treated today. Every expedition to the site treats it as sacred ground. Nothing touched, nothing taken. The ship's final resting place. The Bismarck came to rest on the southern slope of an ancient underwater volcano. When she struck the side of the seamount, she slid down its slope, carving a deep scar into the seafloor clay. As she fell, 100,000 tons of seawater were sucked down in her wake. The area, known as the Abyssal Porcupine Plain, became a silent museum. Here, exploration is done with eyes only. No prying, no probing, no souvenirs, just faithful documentation of what history and the ocean have preserved. International law supports this approach. Sunken warships remain the property of the nation that built them, no matter how deep they lie. UNESCO's underwater heritage laws are clear: no looting, no salvage, no commercial use. Germany has always been firm. Look, document, honor, but never disturb. Studying the unreachable. But how do you study a ship that sits 3 miles beneath the sea without touching it? Divers can't go that deep, and even submarines can't hover with enough precision. The answer is the ROV, a remotely operated vehicle. Picture a tough, refrigerator-sized robot fitted with soft thrusters, HD cameras, sonar, and laser scanners. It moves like a gentle fingertip, gliding through the dark waters. Its cameras capture the eerie stillness of the wreck, while sonar maps shapes hidden in the darkness. Lasers sweep thin beams across the steel, measuring every dent and contour to the inch. Combined, all this data creates a stunning 3D model of the wreck, one that can be studied forever without disturbing a single rivet. Turning the wreck into evidence. A key tool is photogrammetry. The robot takes thousands of overlapping photos from every angle. Software matches the same scratches and edges across images to build an exact 3D map. When this is merged with laser scans, experts can determine whether an explosion came from inside or outside, whether armor plates bent inward or outward, and how damage spread through the hull. It turns the Bismarck into evidence, as clear as a crime scene. A world without sunlight down there, no sunlight ever reaches. The ROV carries its own floodlights, designed to fight the way seawater eats away color. The raw footage glows ghostly blue and green until digital correction restores the missing reds and yellows. Even navigation is a challenge. GPS doesn't work underwater, so the ROV relies on sonar pings, Doppler sensors, and small acoustic beacons placed on the seabed to orient itself. It can hover motionless like a hummingbird, capturing razor-sharp data in the eternal dark. The rule, observe, never disturb. This philosophy, document, don't disturb, was set from the very beginning. In June 1989, Dr. Robert Ballard, the same explorer who found the Titanic, led the team that discovered the Bismarck. Their footage may look grainy today, but the respect shown was profound. They entered the site as visitors to a graveyard. No penetration, no interference, only observation. Every later expedition followed that same code. Even how the ROV moves is dictated by respect. Its thrusters are turned down to avoid stirring silt, and its lights are softened to reveal details without bleaching the scene. Down in the eternal cold of the Atlantic, the Bismarck remains untouched, a silent giant frozen in time. Not just a wreck of war, but a memorial. A reminder of the cost of ambition and of the sea's unending power to keep secrets. If the underwater robot even comes close to brushing against a railing, the pilots instantly pull back. Every move is careful, respectful, because what they're about to uncover in the twisted steel below will tell a much deeper story. But before those scars can speak, we have to go back to the day the Bismarck was born and the 4 furious days that ended with her vanishing beneath the waves. The birth of a monster. The Bismarck wasn't just another battleship. She was built to terrify, a machine of power designed to make entire fleets think twice before engaging. Imagine a warship more than 820 feet long, nearly 120 feet wide, and driven by 3 massive propellers that could push her through open ocean at 30 knots, about 35 miles per hour. Her most vital sections, the engines and ammunition magazines, were sealed behind over a foot of hardened steel armor. Above that, 4 giant twin gun turrets rose from her deck, each weighing over 1,000 tons and armed with 8 15-inch guns. Each shell fired from those guns weighed more than a compact car and could strike with incredible precision, guided by some of the most advanced optics and mechanical computers Germany had ever built in the 1930s. By May 1941, over 2,000 men boarded the Bismarck for one mission: to cut off Britain's lifeline, the flow of food, weapons, and fuel that kept the island nation alive. The operation was called Rheinübung. Bismarck sailed with the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen, hoping to slip into the Atlantic unnoticed and hunt Allied merchant ships. But fate had other plans. Their departure didn't go unseen. British reconnaissance aircraft spotted them near Bergen, Norway, and instantly the chase was on. The Battle of the Denmark Strait. The Royal Navy threw nearly everything it had to block their path. At dawn on May 24th, in the icy waters of the Denmark Strait, between Greenland and Iceland, the German ships ran straight into 2 British warships, the legendary battlecruiser HMS Hood and the brand-new battleship HMS Prince of Wales. The moment the range closed, both sides opened fire. Within minutes, one of Bismarck's 15-inch shells hit the Hood in the worst possible spot. Unlike newer battleships, Hood had thinner deck armor, a compromise made for speed back when she was built. As she turned slightly to bring her rear guns into position, that thin deck was exposed at just the wrong angle. The shell plunged through it, slammed into her aft magazine, the chamber packed with explosives and shells, and triggered a devastating chain reaction. In an instant, the entire rear of the Hood erupted in a massive fireball, tearing the ship in 2. 3 minutes later, she was gone. Out of more than 1,400 men, only 3 survived. The Prince of Wales fought on, scoring several hits on the Bismarck before suffering damage herself and being forced to retreat. For the Germans, it looked like they had broken free. For the British, it was a nightmare. Sink the Bismarck. The loss of the Hood wasn't just a military defeat. It was a national heartbreak. She wasn't merely a ship. She was the pride of the Royal Navy, a symbol every British family recognized. To see her destroyed in minutes sent shockwaves through the nation. The response was immediate. Across Parliament, newspapers, and every fleet command, the message echoed as one: the Bismarck must be destroyed, no matter the cost. Prime Minister Winston Churchill gave the order himself, in the simplest, most famous words of the war: sink the Bismarck. From that moment, the pursuit was no longer about supply lines. It was about revenge, honor, and justice for Hood's crew. Every available ship and aircraft was thrown into the hunt. The wounded beast. But even as she fled, Bismarck was in trouble. Shells from Prince of Wales had ripped open fuel lines near her bow, making one of her critical oil tanks unreachable. Black fuel oil leaked into the sea, leaving a dark trail that told the British exactly where she was heading. Worse, the damage meant she no longer had the range to continue her mission. Instead of raiding Allied convoys, she now had to run for safety, making for Brest, France, to repair and refuel. On May 25th, the German ships split up. Prinz Eugen slipped away into the Atlantic, while the Bismarck, damaged and leaking, turned south, alone. But the British weren't about to let her go. Fueled by rage and grief, they chased her relentlessly across the freezing North Atlantic. That night, as the wind howled and the skies turned black, the first test of the hunt began. 9 slow-moving aircraft were dispatched into the storm. The Sky Strike's back fabric-covered swordfish torpedo bombers lifted off from the deck of the HMS Victorious, their engines straining against the wind and rain. These old biplanes, fragile and slow, flew straight into a storm of anti-aircraft fire to find their target. They dropped their torpedoes through the dark, churning sea. One struck the Bismarck midship, shaking the massive vessel violently, but not destroying her. Damaged yet defiant, Bismarck pressed on. For the next 24 hours, the hunt turned into a deadly game of chess spread across hundreds of miles of open ocean. Every move was guided by radar sweeps, intercepted radio signals, and sometimes sheer luck. The final chase. By May 26th, another British carrier, the HMS Ark Royal, part of Force H under Admiral James Somerville, got its chance. That evening, 15 swordfish took off into gale force winds, the kind that tossed their light planes around like toys. Still, the pilots held their course, guided by updates from the cruiser HMS Sheffield. The first attack went terribly wrong. In the confusion, the swordfish pilots mistook Sheffield for Bismarck, and their torpedoes, equipped with faulty magnetic fuses, failed to detonate. Learning quickly, they switched tactics. The second wave armed their torpedoes with contact fuses, and this time, they struck true. 3 torpedoes slammed into the Bismarck. 2 exploded near her engine rooms. The third smashed into her stern, destroying the steering gear and jamming both rudders. Bismarck could still move, but she couldn't steer. From a deadly predator speeding at 35 miles per hour, she was now reduced to circling helplessly at barely 8. In the stormy Atlantic night, her fate was sealed. The long night. As darkness fell, a pack of British destroyers closed in. Captain Philip Vian led the group, Cossack, Maori, Sikh, Zulu, and the Polish destroyer Piorin, as they surrounded the crippled giant. In the driving rain and pitch-black night, they fired star shells to light up the sky, keeping the wounded Bismarck visible. Then, darting through the darkness, they launched torpedoes whenever they saw an opening. The Bismarck's guns roared back, hurling shells that sent splinters of steel slicing across British decks. But the destroyers weren't there to sink her. Their mission was to harass, exhaust, and track her, to make sure the heavy guns of the fleet could find her at dawn. Through the long, stormy hours, torpedoes hissed through the waves as the Bismarck limped in slow circles, unable to escape. Dawn of the end. The morning of May 27th broke gray and wet over the Atlantic. Out of the mist, 2 British battleships appeared, closing in from different directions. HMS Rodney, armed with massive 16-inch guns, and HMS King George V, the flagship of the home fleet. Admiral Sir John Tovey, low on fuel and unwilling to risk losing his prey, gave the order. The final battle was about to begin. The final battle. The order was clear: close the distance and destroy her. At 8:47 a.m., the battleship HMS Rodney fired the first salvo. Great geysers of seawater erupted around Bismarck as the shells crashed down. Within minutes, the German giant was under relentless fire. Explosions tore through her superstructure, shredding radars, rangefinders, and command bridges. By 9 a.m., Bismarck's main guns had fallen silent. The same ship that had once destroyed the Hood could no longer fire back. But the bombardment didn't stop. Rodney pressed closer, firing with cold precision, while King George V pounded her from farther away. Heavy cruisers joined in, raining 8-inch shells across her hull. Then came the torpedoes. At 10:20 a.m., the cruiser Dorsetshire charged in, firing 2 torpedoes to starboard, then another to port. The explosions tore into her stern, and the ship began to sag, listing heavily to one side. By 10:40 a.m., it was over. The Bismarck rolled onto her side, stern first, and slipped beneath the waves. In less than an hour, Europe's most feared battleship was gone. If you listen to the steel, it tells the story, not with words but with scars. Dents pressed inward show hits from outside. Panels peeled outward mean explosions from within. That's how experts read wrecks. Bismarck's armor still holds strong, her main belt barely pierced. But below, massive holes gape open where torpedoes struck. After she hit the seabed, the slide downhill tore the steel wider, leaving deep scars across the ocean floor. Around the stern, the evidence is mixed. Some damage came from outside hits, some from inside blasts. Once the rudders jammed and water poured in, her structure began to fail from within. Bulkheads buckled, air pockets exploded, and the ship twisted helplessly in the waves. So what truly finished her? German survivors said they scuttled their own ship, opening valves and setting charges to keep her from capture. British experts argue she was already doomed. Shells and torpedoes had torn her apart. Scuttling only sped things up. James Cameron's 2002 expedition disagreed, saying the crew's actions were the final blow. The deliberate flooding sealed her fate. Robert Ballard, who found the wreck in 1989, noticed her hull hadn't imploded, meaning she was already flooded before she sank. In the end, naval engineers agree it wasn't one cause, but many. Gunfire, torpedoes, flooding, and structural failure all worked together. The Bismarck didn't die in an instant. She was crushed slowly by damage, pressure, and time. Thanks for watching. Check out the videos on screen for more incredible stories from history's depths.